You are now listening to Carlie's Couch. I'm Cece Fierce.
And I'm Lextopia. Are your expectations too high? This week we explore expectations and what it means to have them and why.
Happy whatever day it is. Welcome to the couch.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We have a great episode for you today. We're going to get your expectations cleared up because we're going to talk about what's owed to you and what's not.
Chickadee check yourself. That's all I heard in my head. Yeah, I needed this episode for myself. That song, yeah, definitely have to check some expectations. So what are expectations?
And we're just going to hop right into
We are.
it in 2 seconds in the episode. Now that's what we should do. So expectations are what you hope will happen. That's my definition of them.
I was about to say what you expect to happen, but then that's like, wait, what? How you think other people are going to act or should act or should do?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of shoulds. Ugh.
Yeah, it's just what do you want to happen? Essentially, it's just about how you want the world to move around you and other people to move around you. And is that necessarily wrong or right to have those expectations?
I think both. I think it can be good to have expectations in the sense like if I'm working on a team, you know your job description, you know what's expected of you, so you can show up like that every day. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I'm not communicating them onto a friendship, relationship, or another person, or even somebody who works for me or with me, they can be problematic.
If you're not communicating what?
The expectations. Like if I hired you, like if I hire you as a chief operating officer, but you don't know what that entails, and you think it means this thing, and I think it means this, then we're going to be at odds.
Okay. And I view expectations as wrong if you have them without good reason. So
what is a good reason?
Not having good reason is essentially like it has not been clarified or has not been discussed, or there's no reason for you to have that expectation because it was not talked about.
And so I think that's part of, why it's important to talk about expectations is just realizing where we have them and where we don't and why they might be important. For me, I think they can be important to examine your expectations to help you define what your own wants and needs are. Like if you're looking in a certain area and you're expecting something, possibly why? Like what need are you trying to fill with that? What do you really want from a situation? And so it gives you just another mirror to look back at yourself.
So having expectations?
No, as examining your current expectations. So like if I'm like, I expect Lex to do all these things as my friend, like, okay, well, what am I really looking for and why am I putting that on her? Mm-hmm. So I think they can be good to help you like look at what your own needs and wants are.
Mm-hmm. I think conversation around expectations is important because it essentially helps you to avoid or to work through conflict or make it so that you're preventing conflict, because it just allows you to be on the same page. And so when it comes back to alignment, it's just being in alignment with the people and things around you and making sure that you're on that same page, which it doesn't seem like it should be that hard, but it's so often I think that us as individuals, we have so many expectations and we don't even realize maybe that we have them, and they lead to different setups of disappointments in the future. And so, really just to think about it, what they are, and to talk about them kind of helps us identify like, oh, I didn't realize like I was having this many expectations or that I didn't or whatever it may be. But that can help you if you feel like you're always kind of getting disappointed by things, if you're expecting things to go wrong a lot, or kind of see like perpetual cycles that, all right, look at your expectations and manage them.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think it's great to communicate them, not only with yourself and like looking at what your current expectations are with the people in your life, but also the actual people in your life and talking with them so that you're not having a bunch of unmet needs. And like Lex said, just getting disappointed about everything all the time, like going back to people's love languages. I think that we're all different. And so it's important to communicate those things so that we're all on the same page.
Mm-hmm. And so looking at your own expectations, what type of expectations do you feel like you hold?
I have expectations of myself, very high expectations of myself. I have expectations in, I would say, my relationships, like all my friendships. I'm saying all of the ships in the same thing. And also of I guess the people that I work with, like on a level too, like my like customers, clients, or the people who hire me with things, I probably have expectations of all those. What about you?
My thing is like anybody who's said that they will be or do a thing with me, and I think that covers all those same different places you said, and as well as some others, whether it's like the mailman, you know, because like that's their job,
Yeah.
or your family based off of things you've discussed or done. Like there's an expectation for your parents to take care of you to a certain degree because you're a child, and so I think that it's based upon what has been set as what people will do or be for you and what you've talked about. And I don't think it's really right to necessarily have expectations outside of that. And now we can argue or talk about like overall rights and basic human rights. And yeah, you should expect people to treat you well, things like that. Maybe, sure. But that doesn't mean you should expect everybody to smile at you as they walk by or say hello. You know what I mean? So it's like different levels, I think, to it. And imagine if that was a big expectation for you that everybody should say hello when they walk past you. Now think about how bad of a day you're going to have every day because of the people who don't. And it's like really having expectations is just setting you up. Again, to what we started out talking, that's setting you up for being disappointed and setting you up for being in a space you don't need to be in. So it's kind of recognizing where those need to be.
I actually have a funny story about that. So I am from Oklahoma, but I also lived in Texas. And so I'm used to people opening doors for me. Not like but I thought I didn't expect it until I moved to California. And even like men, women, it doesn't matter. People in front of you, they just kind of open the door for you. Man, you know how many doors I walked into almost because nobody like grabbed them. And then also I realized I also had an expectation of men, and just from how I was raised, helping women carry things. Like, not that we're not strong enough, but if you see I got 6 bags and 2 boxes, like, you know, just being kind. Even as a woman, I would offer to help. No, that wasn't a thing either. And so I had to check those expectations and realize like, oh, this is different. And it's not that it's wrong, but that's me putting my expectation of what they should be doing on them.
Yeah. And those are good, like real life examples, because it's not always going to be around like some frou-frou thing, but like, yeah, like, do you expect people to, you know, walk on the outside of you on the sidewalk or do the things like Carlie mentioned? You might. And so things like that, you know, think about too. So listening to this episode, and as you move after this episode through your day, if you do go anywhere, I hope everybody's at home being safe.
Please.
You know, think about when you're like, oh man, or something happens, like what was it that you expected to happen, and was it valid or not? And so with those things, do you think that those are valid expectations?
For me, yes, because it's just like a kindness, like of opening doors for people. Like if you're right there, like why wouldn't you? But also like not necessarily carrying things. Like maybe that's not, I don't know. I
Carrying?
Helping me carry. Yeah, like like if you see somebody struggling with something, like I don't know, I would like to help, but now it's also like, oh, there's germs and stuff. So I think
it's
why
still
not
based
be kind?
on, but that's even with those examples, that's still based on your idea of what somebody should want to do, you know?
Yeah, of wanting to help people, because that they might not have to.
And were they wrong not doing anything?
No, and I don't think that they were. I don't think they were. Like I said, I had to check my expectations of people, but now it is something that I really appreciate, you know, and it's really thoughtful. Like I'm like, oh, that's so thoughtful. Thank you.
And to put it again in a different way, like, to have an expectation, it may be kind of like, we shouldn't say it that way, but I think it's okay. You should appreciate those things. And so to not, I think saying like, oh, I don't expect people to open doors, or I don't expect whatever, doesn't necessarily mean you don't appreciate that or want that.
Yeah.
So we got to clarify that as well, because sure, like that's something I would do for people because I would appreciate them doing that for me. But it's not something that, again, should have you all messed up because they don't do, because why did you have that expectation of them?
And I think it's important to look at like where our expectations come from. And so for me, in that particular sense, it was like my upbringing and just like, we say yes, ma'am, no, sir. Like some of those things, like there are just certain things about sometimes where you're raised, how your parents are, like all of that affect our expectations. But where do like high expectations come from?
I think they can come from that. I think they can come from being judgmental. I think that sometimes you can have really high expectations of people and of things around you because you are, you know, judgy. You're probably judging of yourself or judgy of people, like, oh man, like, why is she just sitting there when she could be working or doing something else? Like things like that is kind of having expectations of people to do things, you know, the way you think they should do them. And so when you're kind of feel some kind of way about people not doing things the way you think they should be done, that's a lot of judgment being passed. And so I think that's a thing to catch for sure. And that's one of the reasons that we can have expectations.
Yeah, for sure. Man, doing things your way.
I mean, that's really at the end of it, right? We talked about like love and other things too. It's like, if you love them, like why do you want everything to be around you? Or like, do you when you say you trust somebody or love somebody, is trusting them, loving them to do what you want them to do, or to do what they need to do, or what they do in life? And
yeah,
so,
and is that really love if it's just doing what you want them to do? It's just a whole bigger discussion. Another one is, I think, trauma. And I think that I say that because I look at where I have the highest expectations in my life, and that's on myself. Like I expect myself, and my therapist helped me get to this point when I realized why I was so frustrated with myself. She was like, well, who do you expect yourself to be? She was like, because what it sounds like is you expect yourself to never have bad days, to always show up and be on, to always, be happy and be able to help people and be the strong person and be there for all your friends. She was like, that is so fucking unrealistic. Like she made me write down like all these hours of what I expect to get done during a day. And I think it was like 64 hours total without sleep. And so it's just, checking those things. And that came from, when I was little, I felt like I had to succeed to get out of the situation that I was in. Like I felt like I didn't have a margin for error. So I put those really high expectations on myself, which often you don't meet because we're not perfect and we're humans. And so that put me in this perpetual cycle of like tearing myself down, but then not being enough. It was a whole thing. But on this side of it, I realized like they can also come from trauma, or even like a past friend or, relationship. The person could have expected you to look perfect every day. And so when you don't, or your mom even, like, why are you coming outside the house with, wearing those, or not, your face not being done? Like my grandma used to put on lipstick to walk to the mailbox. And it's like, why?
Why did you?
Because she didn't want to leave the house looking undone. Naomi.
So why is it important to have clear expectations? And maybe before that, what does it mean to have clear expectations?
That's a good question. I think depending, maybe not even depending on the situation. I think to have clear expectations, you've sat down, you've thought about it, you have communicated it with the other person. And in a sense, like they've either bought in or had their say too, and like their expectations. So maybe it's a two-way street of expectations. It's like, so even when you're hiring with a new company, they expect you to fill this position, but you tell them like, I expect, you look at your hiring package and look at like your sick days and all those things. But also like, I expect to be able to put my input in and to turn in new product ideas and things like that. Like making sure that it's clearly communicated and defined. And to your point earlier, I think both parties in a sense have to kind of buy in.
I think that is mostly it, because really expectations are going to be based on, us having a common goal, common intention. And if you have to, or if you're in a space of needing to be with somebody else, then you have to be both clear about what that is and what your part is in that. And like you said, that looks like contracts and that you might sign with people, or it may be just in discussion. So, for example, when Carlie and I talk about we're doing this podcast and we agree to do a podcast, now there's the expectation of, all right, so we have to meet to do it. We have to get it edited. We have to do the things. And we didn't necessarily sign a paper, or we didn't talk about that, but to agree to do something means that now we have an expectation to carry it out. And so throughout, when I'm kind of saying like, yeah, you can have expectation when you've agreed to do something, or when you've agreed on a particular outcome or output. If we agree to be working on a relationship together, then there are expectations, our particular expectations. What those are, though, I think can be different. It might not be that you send me roses every day. It might be that we are always open to communication, or that we're always on the same page of trying to make sure that we can communicate. And maybe, hey, we're not going to let at least a few days go by, or something like that, right? Being realistic with them, which in this case I think is a real thing. Sometimes we talk about like, oh, what's not realistic or whatever, or that there's no such thing. But thinking about like how you want to be treated, how you want to participate with something, and making sure that the other person has expressed those same things. I think in some places it's indirect.
I like that a lot. And I think it is indirect. Like whenever I don't call a lot of people friends, like people be like, oh, my friend from high school. And I will correct myself and be like, actually, I meant my acquaintance or this girl I know, because when I say I have a friend, it is an investment for me. Like, because I want to, help you build your dreams. I want to do all these things. And that's kind of indirect. Like, we will end up talking about it, but it's not like on the day we decide to be a friend, there's not like a ceremony and we don't go through all these things and sign an oath or anything like that yet. But
I wonder why being a friend is about doing what you're doing for them anyway.
It's not, but I just like to see the people that I care about. Like, I want to just be there in any way that I can. And so, and also, it's being a friend it's just a decision. Like, love every day is a decision to be in any type of relationship, any type of business. It's every day waking up and making that choice to do it and, committing to that every single day.
And then just being sure you're on the same page of like what you're committing to each day.
That's the most important thing.
And I think with friends, you don't talk about it as much though, because I think you're usually friends because you move kind of similarly anyway. Or I don't know. I don't really see that as a thing that happens often with me, or that I've seen a lot where anybody sits down like, let's talk about our friendship. Like, what are we doing here? And I think that's also very interesting because why do we do that so much with relationships as far as romantic relationships where we're always pressed to like, well, what are we doing? What is this about? Or not, and even if without the defining, it's like you have many more expectations. But with our friendships, it's like it's almost like you love your friends better, or like you let them do their thing and they have their space. And when they're there, you're here, you're not. You know what I mean? And it's like, man, why isn't it like that as much with the other way around? Not that it should just be a free for all, like I see you when I see you per se, but you kind of get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like,
why is it so much
clock
pressure?
it way more, and it's like, yo, let it chill. And I think that kind of goes with the flow thing, too. When we talked about being in flow and alignment, it's like when your relationships are in flow, you don't feel like you're constantly trying to in fear, like, well, what's going on? What is this? Oh, I thought this or I thought that. That is your expectations, I believe, being out of whack. And your expectations being more so focused on what you want somebody else to do besides letting that person live their life or you living your life.
And I wonder if that's because... and I'm thinking about, I read A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, and she talks about how our neuroses are most visible in romantic relationships.
Excuse me.
And that's because sometimes we're so attached to finding the right person. Like, there's only one. Like, we can have 10 friends, but there's only one romantic partner that I can be with forever. And so there's a lot of pressure sometimes that comes with that situation. I wonder if it's that or maybe a mix of that and like the risks, like the heartbreak that could come from a romantic relationship because you're being more vulnerable in your head. I don't know, but you're
creating it,
Exactly.
By having expectations, you're kind of creating those issues because now like everything's a problem because everything's not happening the way you want it to happen.
And with friends, we kind of just flow. We do love our friends better. That's crazy. Not crazy.
Like you really want relationships to go a certain way. And I think maybe that's the biggest fail to them is that we're trying to pre-paint it before instead of letting it happen and just, like, why do we just let friendships unfold? And that's why you're good friends, but yet it's not really an unfolding the same. I think that's because you're too pressed. You're pressed about it. You have a lot of fear around having somebody there. And so that's something to think about too.
Yeah. And fear, that's never a good place to operate. You're always losing when you're operating in fear, regardless. So how do we know when we're thinking about these expectations, like if they're, like we talked about, it being unrealistic or possibly too rigid?
I mean, if we're talking about expectations that are like vanity type expectations, if they're minor things, and minor is subjective or objective, I still never know the difference between those two words.
I think it's subjective.
But stuff like your expectations, somebody's like, well, what are your expectations of a man? And maybe it's, for them to wash my car once a week and to make my dinner and to be 6'5" and have a good hairline. And you might have all those things. And I 100% think if that's what you want, then that's fine. And that's what you should go after. But what you're doing is you're blocking out a lot of awesome things that could be better, could be more aligned, that you don't know about or that you're not paying attention to because you want this struggle around trying to make everything fit into this one box. And so that's not necessarily about like knowing it's too unrealistic per se, but there's danger to it being too rigid, and there's danger to you having all these little things that everything has to click off before you're happy, before you decide like that's okay for this relationship. And I think that's kind of unrealistic to do all of those things when it's really what would really help you to feel like you're in a good relationship. And you should be able to kind of get those down to a few basic like things that correlate with you and another person, whether you have particular chemistry or particular respect for each other, love, care, admiration, etc., those types of things. And I think that's what makes more sense when it comes to like expectations and being realistic.
And I like that. I think that there should be certain non-negotiables, like whatever those things are, like love, not cheating, whatever those bases are. And then you have the other things that are a bonus. But if you're closing yourself off for it to be a certain way, like I think that is one sign. I think another one is thinking about like things have to be perfect. And this isn't even like relationship wise. This is like project wise. Like if you're about to launch this thing, but you can't keep launching because, you know, the user interface has to be perfect and this has to be perfect, but there's a glitch with this, and you're like holding yourself back. Like anytime you're holding yourself back, like you probably need to check those expectations and realize like, well, why am I struggling with this? Why do I feel like it has to be perfect before I just launch? Like, is this really it? Because I think it's just a signal or a red flag that there could be other things there too.
Mm-hmm. And another way that you can tell your expectations are too rigid is if it's really just different, if the outcome is different, if you cooked something and you expected it to taste like something else, and it's not necessarily wrong, it's just different than you thought. Or kind of going back to people, if it's like, oh man, this guy's only 5'10", not 6 foot, but that's not wrong. There's there's no moral like wrong right thing there. It's just different. And so to that's not a thing that should be necessarily that's too rigid, I would say, of an expectation, because, again, it's just the blocking yourself out, and it's things that aren't necessarily a right or wrong.
And I don't know if this is quite in line with the expectations per se, but this is exactly in line with what you're talking about. I was listening to a podcast. Actually, I think it's the one with Kyle Cease and Lewis Howes. I was listening to it again. And they were talking about how like people get stuck in making this decision. Should I move here for this job or here for this job? And they put themselves in this turmoil because they feel like there's a wrong answer. And oh my God, what if I moved to Seattle, but I was supposed to move to Tacoma? And there's not a wrong answer. It's just different. And it's whatever story you're painting for yourself, whatever narrative you're writing, like that is the beauty of living life, is not getting caught up in these things.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the expectations that you need to also be really aware of is being too high or too rigid or for yourself, because you're really setting up yourself for turmoil every single day in that case. And so it's also being kind of loose with what your expectations are, whether it's, try hard every day, or whether it is like, you need to get a couple hours done, or whatever that looks like for you, but making sure that they are not unrealistic. Like Carlie talked about, being like, traumas and perfectionism seeping into reasons why you have such high expectations.
Yep. I think another one is relaxing them in relationships, specifically in romantic ones. I'm just here preaching to myself, and letting people just be who and how they are. Like that's really the love part. Like think like how like Alexia was saying, loving people like, friends, like letting them be themselves and letting it unfold. Like relaxing what things have to look like for them to be right or for them to be okay in your life.
There's some places recently in my life where I've really relaxed my expectations of myself, and it makes a huge difference, because like the last few weeks I've been doing like more work than ever, and yet I also feel like I have way more time too. So like I feel like I have a couple hours every morning that I'm kind of chilling. I always have a few hours in the afternoon, evening, and yet it seems like I'm still getting a lot of stuff done and a lot of forward movement. And to me, that makes me think like, all right, it's, having certain expectations of myself, not that I have to be doing something every second, but, when I'm intentional in this space of focusing on a thing, that's what I'm focusing on, being more present. And I feel like overall a little bit more peaceful and content, because it's like, even at the end of the day, it almost is like I don't even think as much about how much work I did, because I know I got a lot done. So like now, instead of being like, oh man, let me look at my thing, how many hours was it? Which was more so I was trying to get to, or maybe it's just that I'm at the next step now to where it's like I'm in the zone. So at the end of the day, like I can say like, oh, I know this move forward, this move forward, this move forward. So I feel good regardless of kind of where I am. And then when I look, I did get that stuff done, but I also did it without the stress through the day of like the up and down of it.
Just makes it more, it's more ease of flow, I guess.
So is there any place in your life that where you feel like you have either relaxed expectations or increase them, I guess, too?
Relax them with myself for sure. Like we talked about, I just I'll never meet these perfect expectations that I have for myself. And when I realized that they were rooted in a place that was really unhealthy and toxic for me and my mindset and just where I am, I like completely relaxed those. I think that's the most important. And from there, it's flowed into my other relationships too. Just, being okay with where things are, like definitely speaking up about my needs and my wants and what things are, but also realizing, when I'm projecting things on people for expectations that we haven't discussed and they haven't agreed upon.
So then are there areas where you can relax your expectations even more?
I don't think so. I think that I'm pretty relaxed with a lot of them. I think they can be more defined, and I'll probably go journal about the ones when it comes to like my career and like what I'm doing when it comes to work, and like those goals for myself, those expectations.
I think more so recognize them with people though. Like I think it would be interesting to take a day to journal, the times, note when you feel disappointed today and like what that looks like and what that is. I think that's how we can tell where our expectations might be. But a place where I can relax them a little bit more, I would say, is of people kind of more so in like the judgmental or ego boosting space where it's like, oh man, like kind of wanting, sometimes feeling like you want more for other people than it feels like they are giving or doing, which isn't even like your business or whatever. So that's kind of like a thing that you're really just making yourself feel better. And so I kind of catch that a lot where I'm like, I might feel some kind of way about like, I'm kind of disappointed in this person, but it's like, that doesn't have nothing to do with me, A, and then B, like, why? Like, let that person do what they do. So,
yeah. Are there any areas of your life where you don't have any expectations?
Not only of people I don't know. I think of anybody that I am but so close to, I do have expectations because they are part of like whatever that project or whatever we're doing in life is. Outside of that, like I don't think I have expectations. Or maybe I should say I recognize I don't think I should have expectations of people necessarily that I don't know, or of my like outside circumstance type stuff that I can't really do anything about.
I think that I don't have any expectations in things that I'm trying out for the first time or creatively. Like for example, if I go to a pottery class, like in my head, I'm just there but I'm also like, would I really have an expectation of walking away with a nice like pottery thing? But in things that I'm new at, or like cooking a meal I've never cooked before, like I have an excitement, but not necessarily an expectation. And so I think those are the only times like when I'm kind of free of expectations. It's things I've never done before.
You expect that experience to be like a like time to like regenerate or whatever, right? Like you expect that to be calming. I think there's stuff we expect. It's just like, is it a wrong or is it like a bad expectation type thing? And that's why I was like, I feel like I can only say it of people like that I shouldn't, but I probably do. Like if I really thought about it through the day and, do you expect somebody to respond to you or when or how or, all kinds of little things. Do you expect somebody to hand you something a certain way? Like there are things that you probably have expectations of, but I think it's really most importantly recognizing that and then like what are you doing with that? And so once you realize a disappointment or something in somebody else, being able to note that like, all right, that expectation was a valid not, and how quickly can you move through things? And I think that overall that's something that's really the key to all of this is just how quickly are you moving through these spaces when you get those feelings. And so to note it and to like not let that ruin your day, or to now, listening to this conversation, think about that as like, oh man, that was just my expectation of that. But, that person didn't have to do anything, or, that bird, might have pooped some on your car and like, well, that bird could have pooped anywhere, but it's just life type stuff. So kind of just assessing yourself and like, what really mattered.
So the process for moving forward when when you realize you have expectations that aren't being met is just kind of examining it and moving through it.
I think when you have an expectation that's not met, you should examine it, and if it's valid, then you need to have tough conversations or deal with it. And if it's not, then you need to move through it.
Also taking personal responsibility for expectations, like especially if they're not aligned, haven't been communicated, and realizing that it's not always about you and what's going on with you.
Yeah, I had a friend man, he never let this go. Like, he always like still says to me all the time, trying to be funny. But at one point, like, we hung out a couple times, and your expectation is different, because I'm thinking like, oh, I'm hanging out, like, I'm getting to know somebody. I don't really owe them anything, and I don't, have talked to them all day and night, stuff like that. But then for them, they might be thinking differently, and so that's why communication is so important. But then, like, I think he got mad at me because I didn't respond to a text or something, and I was like, "Yo, manage your expectations." I said that to him, and he's like so mad. Like, he was like my enemy for like a long time, kind of still is, but he kind of get over it. But he still says to me all the time, like, "Manage your expectations." But he says it like, "Yo, that's a lesson like I really learned," because like, yo, like, that's me telling you, like, yo, I'm not really the problem here. You are thinking there's a whole lot going on. And you're like, why didn't I text you good morning and stuff? And it's like, I'm not. I don't understand what your expectation is, because I haven't agreed to be in that space. And I'm not in that space. And to me, it feels like you're trying to like put me in some space that I didn't say I wanted to be. And so being cautious about that. And when you feel some kind of way, like assessing that, like, yo, where are my expectations at? And if you want a thing to be a different way, having that conversation. So if he's like, oh man, I really wish you would blah, 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 then I would say, hey, well, maybe in time, or like, we're just hanging out or whatever, and then we could have expressed that. And so I think it's just very important that you manage your expectations, and recognizing that when you don't have as many, or when they're not as high, you really like letting go of a lot of disappointment you don't have to experience.
Yeah, and that's not saying don't have boundaries and standards. It's just making sure that you're not projecting all this on people.
Mm-hmm. So this week, hit us up. Let us know your thoughts on the convo. This week's question of the week is, if you had the world's attention for 30 seconds, what would you say?
Oh, I might need a second on this one. If I had the world's attention for 30 seconds. Love and light. I'm just kidding. I'm completely kidding.
That sounds like what you said.
It would be something like that. Something about, using our gifts and our purpose and where we are to help other people and to try to give back and make the world a better place. I don't know. That's what I have right now. I'm not sure. Hopefully I would have more time to prepare that speech.
If I had the world's attention for 30 seconds, I would tell them that I'm Alexia and that I run a business called Capitalized Social, and that they can check out capitalizedsocial.com and check me out at Lex_Topia online, and support our work of developing content that connects them, because we really want to help people build digital communities around their messages, their mission, and we're doing it in a creative way. So I would, if I had the world's attention for 30 seconds, lead traffic towards myself and my work.
Amazing. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining us, guys. Have a great week. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye, y'all.